got to be one of them. I can't be myself. I've got to be one of those guys. But I'm neither one of them. I am Bob Joyce. I was born Bob Joyce, and I will die Bob Joyce.
Few celebrity mysteries have endured like the final chapter of Elvis Presley's life. But what if the story of his death was only part of a much deeper secret? One allegedly guarded for decades by Bob Joyce, a quiet Arkansas pastor linked by some to the king himself. Now, Joyce's story has reignited questions about identity, faith, redemption, and the cost of fame. Could a hidden pact explain why so many mysteries still surround Elvis? And if there is more to the story, could it completely change how we view the king's final years and life beyond the spotlight? The unfolding secret. At 89 years old, Bob Joyce decided to break more than 4 decades of silence. For 46 years, he had carried a secret so profound it could rewrite everything people thought they knew about Elvis Presley's death. This wasn't a simple denial or a typical conspiracy claim. It was a confession born from deep loyalty and a promise he made to the man he once loved and respected. Joyce chose his moment carefully, knowing that his health was declining and that time was slipping away. What he revealed wasn't about pretending to be Elvis or living behind a mask of celebrity. It was about something far more complex. Joyce did not seek fame or fortune by finally speaking out. Instead, he handed over proof to a small group of trusted researchers who had patiently earned his confidence over years of quiet investigation. His opening words were deliberate and steady, signaling that this was not just another story designed to shock, but a solemn vow coming to light. "I'm not here to convince anyone," he explained. "I'm here because I made a promise to a man I loved, and that promise is more important than my life." This admission stood out because it framed the secret as a matter of faith and honor, not deception or fame. Behind Joyce's words lay decades of preparation, a long, careful decision to save a story for a moment when it could be heard without being drowned out by sensationalism. He hinted that the secret went far beyond public theories, going deeper than anyone could have imagined. This was not about a man simply disappearing, but about something much more deliberate, spiritual, and meaningful. The nature of the pact he made with Elvis was unlike anything the media or conspiracy theorists had ever suggested. While many had speculated about Elvis faking his death, Joyce's story offered a new perspective. The secret wasn't an escape. It was a transformation. Elvis's death, as people knew it, was not the end, but the beginning of a plan carefully crafted to rewrite a legacy. Joyce's choice to finally reveal this secret was not just a personal milestone. It was a turning point in how the world might understand the legend called Elvis Presley. Carrying a secret like that was, honestly, immense. For years, Joyce moved through life under a false identity, kind of tucked away by the weight of silence, and this fear that if he revealed too much, everything would crack or shatter. He took in loneliness and loss like daily weather, always knowing the truth he had would tug at old convictions and unsettle people who were invested in the official story. Still, the promise he made was stronger than the cost. It was a bond, really. That sort of shaped his whole adult life and wouldn't let go. The strange part, the sheer extraordinary nature of the secret made just about any attempt at a career, a relationship, or even a normal life hard in a quiet way. Joyce met test after test of his resolve, from offers of money and fame too, but also from personal ties that got strained by mystery, by distance, by that constant half-explained feeling. Each of those moments was like a fork in the road, where he could have stepped away from the pact, but he stayed steady, resolute, because what he promised wasn't only for him, it was also for the memory and redemption of another man. When Joyce finally got ready to reveal what he knew, he didn't show up with nothing but emotion. He brought evidence that few could have even pictured. Letters, photographs, medical records, and audio recordings, all of it confirming what he claimed. This wasn't one of those tales built from whispers or guesses. It was documentation kept carefully for 46 years, stored and preserved, ready to challenge the official narrative in a real way. And the secret Bob Joyce carried wasn't just about Elvis's disappearance. It was, more than that, about proving something bigger altogether, that a man could walk away from fame and choose redemption instead of the life the world expects, almost demands. That truth, once fully unveiled, would change everything, no exaggeration. Even as this story begins to unfold, it invites a shift in how we think about identity, sacrifice, and the price paid for living behind a veil of silence. The shadows of that secret lead us back to the night when two very different men met, setting this entire plan into motion. The meeting in 1977. The meeting between Elvis Presley and Bob Joyce took place in a barely lit private room in a Memphis hotel owned by Elvis. It was May of 1977, only weeks before Elvis's official death. Joyce arrived blindfolded, a precaution that underscored the gravity and secrecy of what was about to happen. When the blindfold came off, he faced a man who looked nothing like the shining star the world adored. Elvis's face was swollen, his eyes heavy with the exhaustion of years spent trapped in a cycle of performances and dependence on medication. Elvis wasted no time with formalities. His voice was raw and tired as he spoke of his life not as one of hope and glory, but as a machine. A complex prison built of contracts, obligations, and control. Colonel Parker, his manager, had tightened the noose with ironclad agreements that chained Elvis to Vegas performances, merchandise deals, and recording contracts extending far beyond his lifetime. Any attempt to break free would have triggered financial penalties larger than the estate could pay. This architecture of entrapment left Elvis with seemingly no escape. As Elvis described this legal and financial cage, Joyce began to see that the conversation was not hypothetical or distant. Elvis was talking about his own life and the inevitable choice he was facing. More than a year of intense theological study had brought Elvis to a profound spiritual crisis. He'd come to believe that the life he was living, the adoration, the fame, the music, was a carefully curated performance of emptiness. His soul was starving beneath layers of fakeness so thick he feared the real self no longer existed. It was in this state of despair and clarity that Elvis made a remarkable proposal. He wasn't asking Joyce to replace him in the spotlight, nor to pretend to be him publicly. Instead, Elvis wanted Joyce to live the life Elvis wished he had lived. He wanted a man who understood that redemption was possible, someone who could prove that meaning existed beyond the demands of fame and fortune. Joyce, a devoted pastor living quietly in Arkansas, was the opposite of everything Elvis had been publicly, yet exactly what Elvis needed. The offer carried this kind of incredible weight to it. Elvis wasn't really searching for financial exchange or public recognition. Not like that. Through family trusts and careful channels Joyce was provided, enough money just to live modestly and sustain a ministry. That part was considered essential, to keep Joyce's freedom intact so he could live authentically without compromise. The real payment, as Joyce later explained, wasn't money at all. It was spiritual and symbolic, like a chance for redemption, not only to exist in theory, but to be shown through real life. The meeting itself felt fraught with secrecy, and still somehow there was a mutual understanding that went past words, like both of them knew before they said. Elvis, worn physically and emotionally, confided in Joyce about a deeply personal struggle with identity, faith, and future. The two men represented contrasting lives, fame's heavy machine and quiet devotion, yet somehow in each other they found a chance for something new. It wasn't just escape, it was transformation. Or at least, that's how Joyce would later describe it. When the night was done, Joyce agreed to the proposal. But he didn't then fully grasp the loneliness and the challenges waiting for him. He was stepping into a role that asked for sacrifice beyond ordinary understanding, and he was tasked with keeping a secret larger than either of them could explain. The complexity of this deal wouldn't stop there. It reached deep into arrangements involving family, finances, and carefully orchestrated logistics. The terms of the deal. According to the story, the agreement between Elvis Presley and Bob Joyce was built less on money than on trust, spirituality, and sacrifice. Joyce was supposedly never meant to become a public double or impersonator. Instead, his role was to live quietly and demonstrate that stepping away from fame could represent freedom rather than failure. The financial arrangement was allegedly designed to avoid suspicion. Elvis could not simply transfer a large fortune without raising legal and public questions, so support was reportedly provided through family trusts and carefully controlled channels. Joyce would receive enough to maintain a modest life and continue his ministry, but not enough to attract attention or live extravagantly. The goal was stability, not wealth. Spiritually, the agreement carried even greater meaning. Elvis reportedly saw Joyce as the opposite of the celebrity world he had become trapped inside. A man who valued peace, faith, and purpose over applause. Joyce's quiet life would serve as proof that fulfillment did not require fame. The plan supposedly involved more than simply changing identities. Family members, including Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, were said to have helped coordinate certain details. A baptism in Arkansas in 1978 was described as a symbolic beginning of Joyce's new chapter, representing commitment to the life he was expected to lead. Supporters of the story also claim the arrangement included careful planning surrounding Elvis's official death and the public narrative that followed. Certain people allegedly knew parts of the plan, while everyone else was allowed to believe the accepted version of events. For Joyce, however, the pact supposedly came with an enormous personal cost. He had to protect the secret for decades, limiting relationships and rejecting opportunities to speak publicly. Media outlets, publishers, and others allegedly offered him money to reveal what he knew, but he continued refusing. Joyce believed breaking his silence would destroy the purpose of the agreement itself. The pact was supposedly meant to show that redemption could come through walking away from status, money, and expectations. Whether accepted as truth or viewed as an extraordinary claim, the alleged deal forms the foundation of the Bob Joyce mystery. It presents a very different picture of Elvis's final chapter, one centered not on tragedy, but on the possibility of choosing peace over the spotlight. Though the details of this profound deal are astonishing enough, the proof Joyce carried would soon confirm that this was no fantasy, but a carefully documented reality. Living the lie. Accepting the deal meant Bob Joyce had to live a life defined by secrecy. According to the story, he stepped away from the world connected to Elvis Presley and built a quiet existence centered on ministry in Arkansas. The contrast could not have been greater, from screaming crowds and global fame to a small church community where few knew anything about the burden he supposedly carried. That secrecy came at a personal cost. Joyce struggled to build close relationships because revealing too much could expose the truth he had promised to protect. He reportedly fell in love twice, but both relationships eventually ended because he could never fully explain his past. Marriage, he believed, would have made keeping the secret nearly impossible. Over the years, Joyce also faced repeated temptations to speak. Tabloids, television producers, and book agents allegedly offered him money and publicity if he would tell his story. Each offer provided a chance to step into the spotlight, yet Joyce continued refusing. Loyalty to the pact, along with fear of what might happen if the secret became public, kept him silent. The pressure only kept building whenever fresh Elvis conspiracy theories showed up, like it was this endless loop or something. Joyce reportedly got worried that investigations, media attention, or forensic claims could pull in unwanted scrutiny and then just not stop. At certain moments, he felt that influential people tied to the entertainment world were sort of expecting him to stay quiet. That added yet another layer of fear onto his already isolated life. Because, it wasn't just one thing. Decades of stress, allegedly, also started hitting him physically. Joyce experienced insomnia, ongoing aches, and exhaustion as he got older. Still, inside his church he kept serving, a respected pastor with this calm look on the outside, while supposedly carrying some private secret that shaped almost every decision he made, even the small ones. One big test came in 1987 when reports surfaced suggesting Elvis's voice may have been recorded after his official death. Joyce reportedly thought about coming clean, praying and writing letters he never actually sent. In the end, though, he stayed silent. All through it, Joyce believed his own sacrifice had a higher design. In his mind, silence wasn't only about concealing the truth. It was about loyalty, faith, and the idea that someone could walk away from the spotlight in search of peace. But Joyce's story didn't simply stop with all those decades of quiet. The evidence he claimed to have would become the next and the most controversial part of the mystery. The documents and recordings Joyce brought forward offered a startling glimpse into a world few could imagine, transforming speculation into undeniable evidence. Evidence and proof. When Bob Joyce revealed his story, he claimed to possess decades of evidence supporting the alleged secret surrounding Elvis Presley. Among the materials were letters supposedly written by Elvis after 1977, describing his spiritual transformation, struggles with fame, and desire to leave public life behind. Joyce also pointed to previously unseen photographs, medical details, and unusual physical similarities that supporters believe connect him to Elvis. These reportedly included dental characteristics and a rare vocal condition. Details often cited as evidence by those convinced there is more to the official story. Perhaps the most dramatic claims involve audio recordings allegedly made years after Elvis's reported death. Joyce said the tapes captured conversations with an older Elvis discussing faith, redemption, and the value of living outside the spotlight. Supporters argue the voice sounds remarkably similar, while skeptics continue to question their authenticity. Joyce further claimed that Elvis's death had been staged with help from family members and others who supposedly agreed to protect the secret. According to this version, another body was used, while officials allowed the official account to remain unchallenged. The documents also allegedly described Elvis's worsening health and dependence on prescription medication. They portrayed a man who believed continuing his lifestyle could eventually destroy him, and escaping seemed like his only path towards survival and peace. The most extraordinary claim was that Elvis actually lived until 1997, spending 2 additional decades away from public attention before dying naturally. None of these claims have been conclusively established by publicly verified evidence, but together they form the foundation of Joyce's controversial story. For believers, the documents and recordings suggest a carefully hidden second chapter. For skeptics, they remain extraordinary allegations requiring extraordinary proof. The truth Bob Joyce revealed had finally found its voice, changing forever how we remember the King. Legacy and redemption. Bob Joyce's story reframes the mystery surrounding Elvis Presley by shifting the focus from fame and tragedy to redemption, identity, and personal choice. For decades, Elvis has been remembered as a global icon whose life ended under the crushing weight of celebrity. But the theory surrounding Joyce suggests a different possibility, that escaping the spotlight may have represented a final act of freedom. In this version of the story, the supposed pact was never about preserving fame, It was about proving that a person could walk away from wealth, pressure, and public expectations in search of something more meaningful. Joyce's quiet life and ministry are presented by believers as evidence that peace can matter more than applause and purpose, more than status. The story sort of pokes at society's obsession with celebrity. Elvis had everything millions dream about: money, influence, and full-on worldwide recognition. But somehow, those same forces were reported to turn into pressure and even isolation. The notion that he might have picked simplicity over stardom turns his legacy into this more personal, almost uncomfortable idea. People backing the Bob Joyce theory also point to family members and some insiders who allegedly helped shield the secret. They claim the quiet wasn't kept for profit. Rather, it was meant to preserve a decision that was supposed to give Elvis a chance at a different life. Even if you accept these claims or you stay skeptical, the story still drags you toward a question that feels bigger than just one man. What does success really mean? Is winning always about staying on top, or can it sometimes mean stepping away quietly? By the end, the Bob Joyce theory basically adds another layer to the Elvis Presley mythology. And more than anything, it urges people to reflect on fame, freedom, and the cost we're willing to pay, so we can live in a way that actually feels like us. Bob Joyce's story changes everything we thought we knew about Elvis Presley, revealing a secret pact rooted in faith, sacrifice, and redemption. It's a powerful reminder that true victory can sometimes mean leaving the spotlight behind to find lasting peace. If you found this story compelling, like and subscribe for more untold truths that go beyond the headlines. And keep watching by clicking the next video appearing on your screen, where another surprising story is waiting to be uncovered.